By morning, the USS Enterprise had a full deck of planes belonging to everybody else's carrier, including two SB-2Cs were among the group of planes. And all the carriers were planning the next morning to launch planes to return to their proper carrier and to land their own planes when they got the deck free to do so. When launch time came, the two Cs were positioned ahead. The second SB-2C that had arrived was positioned ahead of me, where my plane was. And for some reason or other, they removed it. Apparently the pilot of that plane didn't like the way it was checking out before launch. So making my SB-2C the first to attempt takeoff and the first to make a landing. All of these are first with the SB-2C and the Enterprise. Never did get a chance to see what the Enterprise logbook might say about it, but it didn't happen. The flight deck making my SB-2C the first to attempt taking off from the Enterprise. All of the observation positions all around on the ship were filled with observers coming out to watch the SB-2 make a big splash into the ocean because the Enterprise had a rather short deck. They did not have SB-2C as a regular plane. I wasn't concerned about it, but the reason being was that I had no armament and a very light fuel load. So I knew that it would be easy to fly off the ship. In fact, when given the signal to go, the plane roared down the deck and was airborne by the time we crossed the forward elevator. And I was retracting the landing gear by the time we reached the bow. So all the people were disappointed they didn't get to see the show. The first plane to land on the Enterprise and the first to fly off of it. On return to the Hornet, we learned that the news was not so good. Of the 14 planes that Bombing Squadron 2 went out on the attack, only 2 came back. The squadron commander brought a plane back home, as did I, Taylor and Charlie. Otherwise, they ditched them because they ran out of fuel or they crashed on landing or something, and trying to make a landing. So it didn't get back home anyway. My most memorable non-combat experience involved a carrier landing. Upon returning to the Hornet on a former outing, we found the ship in the midst of a tropical storm. Waves were so high that the bow of the carrier was taking on water at the bottom of the wave trough. You can imagine this. And the flight deck stern was 80 feet above the water. And in that position, you can imagine, if you will, the aircraft approaching the carrier from the stern, attempting to land with the 80-foot rise and fall of the flight deck. And those two giant propellers running at you. So the massive propellers as the bow went to the bottom of the trough. Fortunately, we had a senior landing signal officer who had done a previous tour in the North Atlantic and experienced with rough water. And he was able to bring in the whole flight once he got everybody on the same wavelength for spacing and what have you. He brought the whole flight in. So that was an experience that I'd rather not have to do again. Anyway, the balance of the tour was done with a return to the Philippines. And we could found things to strafe and bomb, airfields and little sampans and what have you. The climax was bombing merchant and naval vessels in Manila Bay. My experience to combat in the Pacific as a dive bomber lasted 5 months and 20 days. We had 27 sorties, as the Navy chose to call it, involving 121 hours of flight time and 37 carrier landings. We returned to San Francisco in late September with orders including a 30-day leave to report to Norfolk, Virginia for assignment to a new air group as they were being formed. And I chose a bomber fighter group, VBF-95, flying an F-4U Corsair. I didn't want any more SB-2C. And that was the squadron I was in for my second tour of the Pacific. My rank at the time that I was released to inactive duty as, in effect, it's well, it was my rank was a Lieutenant JG, which is a sub-lieutenant. Upon release to inactive duty from the U.S. Navy, and with that, I'd say thank you and for letting me share my memories.